I was holding a delicate teacup, trying not to tremble, when my mother's voice sliced through the laughter around the table. "Abigail, stop calling me unless you can prove you're worth anything." The words hung in the air like poison. My hand froze mid-pour. Around us, forks clattered against plates. Eyes widened. My cousins stopped their conversation mid-sentence. Even my aunt's constant chatter fell silent. The air tasted of shock and something sharper. Betrayal. My name is Abigail Hart, and in that moment, surrounded by family at Sunday brunch, I realized something profound. I'd been underestimated for years. Decades, really. My mother saw me as weak, compliant, forgettable. The daughter who never quite measured up to my sister's accomplishments. But she had absolutely no idea what I quietly held. What I'd been protecting and planning for years. I retreated to the kitchen, my hands shaking as I set down the teapot. Through the doorway, I could hear my mother resuming conversation as if nothing had happened. As if she hadn't just publicly humiliated her own daughter. I stared at the chipped ceramic mug in my hands, the one I'd used since childhood. Every insult flooded back. Every slight. Every family gathering where I'd felt invisible. My mother's obvious favoritism toward my sister Helena. The constant comparisons. "Why can't you be more like Helena? Helena would have handled that better. Helena's husband is so successful." The sneers. The dismissals. The way she introduced me to her friends as an afterthought. All of it crashed over me like a wave. But this time, instead of drowning in it, I felt something different. Clarity. Cold, sharp clarity. "This ends on my terms," I vowed silently. I made a decision right there in that kitchen. No more emotional reactions. No more tears or arguments that went nowhere. I would stop reacting and start acting. Strategically. Patiently. I'd learned long ago that my mother fed on emotional responses. She wanted the tears, the anger, the desperate attempts to win her approval. That gave her power. Control. But what if I simply stopped giving her that satisfaction? What if I became calm, measured, impossible to read? I wiped my eyes, fixed my face into a neutral expression, and returned to the dining room. My mother glanced at me, clearly expecting tears or an outburst. Instead, I smiled politely and asked if anyone wanted more tea. The confusion in her eyes was almost satisfying. Almost. But I knew this was just the beginning. I had years of planning ahead. Over the next few months, I attended every family dinner, every holiday gathering, every Sunday brunch. But I changed my approach completely. I wore a calm mask, observing everything with new eyes. I noted every word my mother said, every smug glance she exchanged with Helena, every subtle put-down disguised as concern. I tracked patterns, weaknesses, the ways her hubris made her blind to what was happening right under her nose. Patience became my weapon. During one particular dinner, she was holding court as usual, telling stories about her youth, her achievements, her perfect life. "This house has been in our family for generations," she said proudly, gesturing around the dining room. "I've maintained it beautifully, haven't I?" Everyone nodded and murmured agreement. But her casual remark sparked something in my mind. Flash of inspiration. A memory of paperwork I'd signed years ago. The house, course. The centerpiece of her identity, her pride. The place where she ruled like a queen over her little kingdom. I'd almost forgotten about the deed modification we'd done years ago. I'd been 22, fresh out of college, and she'd asked me to help with some estate planning paperwork. "Just a formality," she'd said. "In case something happens to me, it'll make things easier." I'd signed without thinking much about it, trusting her completely back then. But now I realized what that signature might mean. The next day, I drove to the county recorder's office. My hands shook slightly as I requested the property records. When the clerk handed me the document, I had to read it 3 times to believe what I was seeing. Name. Right there on the deed, as a co-owner. Cool rights. Cool say. She'd forgotten. Or maybe she'd never taken it seriously. But it was legal, recorded, and absolutely binding. Armed with this knowledge, I became even more strategic. While helping my mother rearrange furniture one afternoon, she actually praised me. "You know, Abigail, you do have a sense of responsibility when you apply yourself." The condescension dripped from every word, but I just smiled. "Thank you, Mother. I try my best." She had no idea that I'd just confirmed my legal standing, that I'd been reviewing the property deed repeatedly, understanding every clause and implication. The house she lorded over everyone. The one she used as proof of her success and superiority. I had equal claim to it. That knowledge sat in my chest like a warm coal, glowing quietly. The perfect moment to reveal this would come. I just needed to wait. And she would never see it coming. Her arrogance would make sure of that. People who underestimate you rarely imagine you could hold power they've forgotten giving you. At another brunch the following month, my mother ridiculed me in front of my aunt and several cousins. "Abigail never could keep a proper garden," she said, laughing. "Remember when she killed every plant I gave her? No sense of nurturing whatsoever." The table laughed along with her. Helena smirked into her mimosa. Instead of defending myself or shrinking away as I once would have, I smiled politely. "You're absolutely right, Mother. Gardening isn't my strength." My calm agreement seemed to throw her off balance for a moment. She'd wanted a fight, a chance to embarrass me further. My refusal to engage left her narrative incomplete. I noticed my aunt watching me with new interest. My cousin Sophia stopped laughing and looked thoughtful. My restraint was beginning to earn silent respect from some family members. They were starting to see the contrast between my mother's need for superiority and my quiet dignity. I began documenting everything. Every slight, every public humiliation, every moment where my mother's behavior crossed lines of basic decency. I kept a journal, noting dates and witnesses. Not for legal purposes necessarily, but because writing it down made it real. Made it impossible to gaslight myself into thinking I was overreacting. At the same time, I started dropping subtle hints to family members about my involvement with the house. I remember when we renovated this bathroom, I'd say casually, "I helped Mother pick out these tiles." Or, "The garden layout was something Mother and I planned together, back when I first moved home after college." Nothing dramatic, just small, innocuous comments. But I noticed my mother's eyes narrow slightly whenever I made them. She was starting to feel uncertain, though she couldn't quite pinpoint why. That uncertainty was exactly what I needed. During a small family gathering, my mother made a comment about my career choices. "Abigail's always been content with mediocrity," she said, as if I weren't sitting right there. "Unlike Helena, who's really made something of herself." It was a familiar script. But this time I looked her directly in the eye and said calmly, "I'm satisfied with my choices, Mother. Not everyone needs to seek external validation." The room went quiet. My aunt coughed. Helena looked uncomfortable. My mother's face flushed red. "Are you implying something, Abigail?" she demanded. I smiled serenely. "Just stating a fact about myself, Mother. Why would you think it implies anything?" She sputtered, unable to articulate why my statement bothered her so much. I'd said nothing overtly challenging, nothing she could point to as disrespectful. But everyone in the room sensed the shift. The balance of power was beginning to change, so subtly most couldn't name it. But they felt it. My mother's response to this shift was predictable. Her arrogance grew. She doubled down on her superiority, flaunting her plans for the house to relatives. "I'm thinking of renovating the entire kitchen," she announced at dinner one night. "Marble countertops, professional-grade appliances. This house deserves the finest." She looked around the table, waiting for admiration. I listened quietly, calculating. Every statement she made about her plans, her control, her authority over the property was digging her hole deeper. She was building a narrative of sole ownership, of complete dominion. When the truth came out, the contrast would be devastating. I noticed an opportunity forming. Her next big move, whatever it was, would expose her overconfidence completely. I just needed to position myself correctly and wait for her to walk into the trap she was building for herself. Pride, I'd learned, really does come before a fall. I scheduled a meeting with a lawyer, careful to use a firm outside our small town where gossip might spread. I brought the property deed and explained my situation. The lawyer, a woman in her 50s named Patricia, studied the document carefully. "This is absolutely legitimate," she confirmed. "You have equal ownership rights. She cannot sell, mortgage, or make major changes to the property without your consent." I felt relief wash over me. What if she doesn't remember I'm on the deed? Patricia smiled slightly. "That's her problem, not yours. The law is clear. Your signature is required for any significant legal action involving this property." We discussed strategies for various scenarios. I left her office feeling prepared for whatever came next. All the while, I remained outwardly polite and supportive to my mother. I helped her plan her elaborate kitchen renovation. I smiled at her stories. I played the role of the compliant daughter. She believed I was unthreatening, harmless. That belief would be her downfall. At a cousin's birthday party, I was helping set up when I accidentally let some relatives overhear a comment. "I remember when Mother and I renovated the living room," I said to Sophia, just loud enough to be overheard. "We spent weeks choosing the right paint color." Nothing more. I moved on to another topic. But I saw the seed of doubt planted. Aunt Caroline frowned slightly. Cousin Thomas looked curious. The implication was subtle but clear. I'd been more involved in the house than anyone realized. Later, I noticed my mother watching me from across the room, her expression uncertain. She'd heard the comment too, but she couldn't challenge it without revealing her own uncertainty about what I might know. Family curiosity was growing. Whispers started. "Has Abigail been helping her mother more than we thought? She seems very knowledgeable about the house renovations." My mother decided to reassert her dominance by hosting an elaborate dinner party. She invited extended family, her closest friends, and several prominent members of the community. The table was set with her finest china. The meal was catered. Everything was designed to showcase her taste and status. During dinner, she held court as usual, talking about her achievements and the house. "I've maintained this property beautifully," she declared. "The value has tripled since I took ownership." Then she made a slip. Discussing finances, she mentioned specific investment amounts that didn't quite match what I knew she had available. It was a small inconsistency, but several people at the table noticed. My uncle raised his eyebrows. Aunt Caroline looked confused. I remained silent, savoring the moment. A small smile crept onto my face as relatives exchanged puzzled glances. My mother noticed, glaring at me. But she couldn't challenge my smile without looking paranoid. I began making suggestions about the house that subtly emphasized my knowledge and involvement. "That wall would be better if we moved it slightly," I'd say during the kitchen renovation planning. "The structural support runs here, so we'd need to account for that." Or, "The original blueprint shows the plumbing lines run differently than the contractor assumed." My mother accepted these suggestions because they were helpful and accurate. But she didn't realize I was establishing myself as knowledgeable about the property in ways that suggested deeper involvement. My recommendations saved money and prevented mistakes. The contractors started addressing questions to both of us. Family members noticed that decisions were increasingly being made collaboratively, even though my mother still believed she was in charge. Her hubris blinded her to the trap I was quietly laying. Every acknowledgement of my expertise was another brick in the foundation of credibility I was building. Some of my cousins began questioning my mother's decisions after noticing my consistent competence. "Abigail, what do you think about the kitchen layout?" Sophia asked during a family gathering. My mother started to answer, but Sophia specifically looked at me. I offered a thoughtful, detailed response. My mother's face tightened with irritation. This happened more frequently. Relatives who'd once dismissed me started seeking my opinion. My mother tried to redirect attention back to herself, But the subtle shift in family dynamics couldn't be stopped. I remained neutral, never openly challenging her authority. I didn't need to. The family was naturally beginning to see me as more capable than she'd ever allowed them to believe. Some cousins started confiding in me about their own problems with my mother's controlling behavior. An alliance was forming without me even pushing for it. Tension rose steadily, but my mother didn't fully realize the respect she was losing. During a small celebration for my aunt's birthday, my mother publicly criticized my taste in furniture arrangement. "Abigail has no eye for design," she announced to the room. "She'd probably put the couch in the middle of the room if I let her." I calmly pointed out that the current furniture arrangement blocked the natural flow of traffic and suggested a better solution. Several people immediately recognized the logic of my suggestion. "That actually makes a lot of sense," my uncle said. "The current setup is awkward." My mother flushed with anger and embarrassment. She tried to diminish me and ended up looking foolish when my suggestion was obviously superior. She couldn't even argue against it without looking stubborn and irrational. The moment passed, but everyone had seen it. The crack in her image of superiority was widening. And she still didn't see the real threat beneath these small defeats. Relatives started asking me questions about house improvements directly, often while my mother was present. "Abigail, didn't you help with the bathroom renovation? Abigail, which contractor did that excellent work on the deck?" My mother tried to intervene, redirecting attention to herself. But people increasingly ignored her deflections, preferring my straightforward, knowledgeable answers. Her authority was slipping and she could feel it. The frustration showed in her tightened jaw, her clipped responses. One afternoon, after I'd spent an hour discussing renovation options with cousins, my mother pulled me aside. "You're making me look incompetent," she hissed. I looked at her innocently. "I'm just answering questions, Mother. Isn't that helpful?" She couldn't argue without admitting she felt threatened. All she could do was glare at me and walk away, fuming. I'd done nothing overtly challenging. That was the beauty of it. I was simply being knowledgeable and helpful. Her insecurity did the rest. My mother's paranoia grew. She started watching me constantly, trying to catch me in something she could call scheming. During family dinners, her eyes followed my movements. When I spoke to relatives, she'd appear beside me, trying to control the conversation. It was exhausting for her and obvious to everyone. One evening, she actually accused me directly. "You're trying to turn the family against me," she said loudly enough for people to hear. "All these little comments about the house, acting like you have some special claim." I remained calm. "Mother, I'm not sure what you mean. I've only been trying to help." The contrast between her agitation and my composure was stark. A quiet ally, my cousin Thomas, decided to stir the pot. "Doesn't Abigail's name appear on some of the property documents?" he asked innocently. My mother froze. The color drained from her face. "What? Why would you say that?" Thomas shrugged. "I just thought I remembered seeing her name somewhere. Maybe I'm wrong." After that dinner, my mother became increasingly controlling, attempting to micromanage every family event and interaction. She wanted to reassert dominance, but her behavior had the opposite effect. She looked desperate, irrational. At my cousin's engagement party, she tried to take over planning from the engaged couple. When they politely declined her input, she caused a scene. "I'm just trying to help," she insisted loudly. "No one appreciates everything I do for this family." My calm responses to her outbursts made the contrast even more obvious. While she ranted about respect and tradition, I quietly helped the couple with practical details. Relatives noticed. "Your mother seems stressed," Sophia said to me privately. "You're handling everything so well." The family was beginning to see clearly. Her irrationality versus my composed presence. Her desperate need for control versus my quiet competence. The narrative was shifting completely, and she was powerless to stop it. I decided it was time for a subtle reveal. During a casual conversation about home renovations with several family members, I mentioned offhand, It's funny, I thought my name might be involved with the property paperwork too. I remember signing something years ago. My mother, sitting nearby, froze completely. Her teacup paused halfway to her lips. "What did you say?" she asked, her voice tight. I looked at her innocently. "Oh, just that I remember signing some property documents. When I was in my early 20s. You said it was for estate planning." Her face went pale. I could see her mind racing, trying to remember. Had she really put my name on the deed? Surely not. But the uncertainty was there now, planted and growing. "That was nothing," she said too quickly. "Just routine paperwork." I nodded agreeably. "Probably. I'm sure you're right." But the doubt was visible in her eyes. She was beginning to realize she might have seriously underestimated me. My mother's anxiety built steadily over the next few weeks. She kept returning to my comment about the property paperwork, trying to get me to clarify or retract it. But I remained vague, almost forgetful. "I really don't remember the details, Mother. It was so long ago." Her uncertainty ate at her. I knew she was too proud to go check the deed herself. That would be admitting she didn't remember, didn't have complete control. So she lived with the growing fear that I might actually have legal standing she'd forgotten about. She bragged about her control over the house one last time at a formal family dinner. "This property is mine," she declared. "I've maintained it. I've improved it. It reflects my taste and my decisions entirely." Everyone at the table sensed the defensive edge in her voice. She was trying to convince herself as much as them. I remained silent, letting her arrogance peak. The tension was palpable. Everyone knew something was building. She was teetering on the edge of a revelation she couldn't see coming. The calm before the storm felt surreal. My mother lectured me on respecting elders at yet another gathering. "You young people think you can do whatever you want," she said pointedly, looking at me. "But there are still rules. Still hierarchies that matter." I smiled politely. "Of course, Mother. Respect is important." Inside, I knew the next moment would be everything I'd been preparing for. I'd already contacted Patricia, my lawyer, and finalized all necessary paperwork. I had certified copies of the property deed, prepared statements, and a clear understanding of my legal rights. I'd chosen the perfect moment for the revelation. A dinner party my mother had planned to show off her completed kitchen renovation. She'd invited everyone significant in our social circle. It would be her moment of triumph. Or so she thought. I arrived at the dinner with a folder of documents in my bag, feeling strangely calm. Years of preparation had led to this moment. The dinner party was everything my mother had hoped for. The renovated kitchen gleamed. Guests complimented her taste and vision. She glowed with pride and satisfaction, holding court from her position at the head of the table. The conversation turned to real estate and property values. "This house has appreciated remarkably," my mother said. "Of course, that's due to my excellent maintenance and improvements." She smiled around the table. "I'm considering selling it, actually. The market is perfect right now." Gasps of surprise. Selling the family home. But it's been in the family for generations. My mother shrugged elegantly. "Everything has its price. I've had some very attractive offers." This was my moment. I reached into my bag and pulled out a folder. "Actually, Mother, any sale would require my signature as well." Silence fell like a hammer. She stared at me. "What are you talking about?" I opened the folder and pulled out a certified copy of the property deed. "My name is on the deed. I'm a co-owner. Have been for 12 years. I passed the document around the table. Everyone could see it clearly. 2 names on the ownership line, my mother's and mine. Equal rights. The room erupted in shocked murmurs. My mother's face went from pale to red to pale again. "That's impossible," she whispered. "You must have forged something." I remained calm, prepared for this accusation. "It's certified by the county recorder's office. You had me sign it when I was 22. For estate planning purposes, you said." I have copies of all the original paperwork, including your signature on the filing. Patricia, my lawyer, had assured me the documentation was airtight. My mother's hands shook as she took the deed copy, reading it over and over. Her world was crumbling before her eyes. Helena looked horrified. Aunt Caroline covered her mouth. My uncle started asking legal questions. So Abigail has equal say in any decisions about the property. She has to consent to any sale or major changes. She's had this authority for 12 years. I nodded to each question. My mother's arrogance and belittlement were now fully exposed. She'd spent years treating me as worthless, forgettable, while I held equal power over her most prized possession. In the weeks that followed, my mother struggled to regain respect and authority within the family and social circles. But the revelation had changed everything. Her treatment of me was now viewed through a new lens. People remembered every insult, every public humiliation, every dismissal. And they realized she'd done it all while I held legal rights she'd completely forgotten about. The story spread through our community. Some people admired my patience and strategy. Others were shocked at how completely she'd underestimated her own daughter. I remained composed through all of it, answering questions calmly when asked, but never gloating. I didn't need to. The facts spoke for themselves. My mother eventually tried to apologize, but it rang hollow. Too little, too late. I'd proven my worth in the most irrefutable way possible. Not through anger or confrontation, but through patience, strategy, and intelligence. I moved out of the family home shortly after, purchasing my own place. The property remained jointly owned, a permanent reminder of her mistake. I was finally free of the emotional weight of her disapproval. The house, the respect from family, and the quiet moral victory were mine. I'd won not by fighting on her terms, but by holding steady on mine. Empowered, unshakable, and finally at peace. My mother's hubris had caused her own downfall, and I thrived quietly, walking away knowing my true value had never depended on her recognition. It had always been there, waiting patiently for the right moment to emerge.